that story you were telling me.
Couple boys clock out about 5:35, trying to put a little hammer in their head. Standing in the liquor store staring at a fifth, but they picked up a handle instead. Hell right.
Hell right.
Hell right.
Okay.
Couple girls with their boots on, got their Bluetooth on, t-shirts saying go Sooners. Then the girl from the small town took off the old town, put on the little Hank Jr.
Thank God.
Hell right. She got all her rowdy friends coming over tonight. Hell right. Hell right. Everybody's throwing down on a Friday night somewhere in America. There's a bottle to burn and a fire to light, and you ain't done nothing if you did it halfway. If you're gonna raise hell, then you better damn raise hell right. Hell right. Hell right. There's a guitar on the ground that was making some sound till somebody pulled a hillbilly slip. Now there's fog on the window. She never would have kissed him if he didn't play a lick like this. Hell right. Hell right. Hell right. Hell right. Everybody's throwing down on a Friday night somewhere in America. There's a bottle to burn and a fire to light, and you ain't done nothing if you did it halfway. If you're gonna raise hell, then you better damn raise hell right. Hell right. Hell right. Now 7 a.m., damn if there ain't an empty handle on a square hay bale. Everybody's passed out drunk, but when they wake up, they're all gonna hurt like hell right. Yeah, boy. Hell right. Hell right. Everybody's throwing down on a Friday night somewhere in America. There's a bottle to burn and a fire to light, and you ain't done nothing if you did it halfway. If you're gonna raise hell, then you better damn raise hell right. Hell right. Hell right.
Introducing to you.
You're on House of Cards, live on Facebook and YouTube.
It's going down.
Locked and loaded with the truth.
And you are listening to the House of Cards on the Big Patriot Radio Network.
Locked and loaded.
Let's go.
Big Patriot Radio. Blues, news, country pop, and classic rock.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Mike Covert here. Welcome to another big show. Somebody says, is there sound? Can you hear me? Helga, let me know if you can hear me. I hope so. I can hear me, and I heard the music. Yep, Mom says you can hear me. All good. Helga, let me know if something else happens. Hey, thanks you, honey, for letting me know. Tonight's show broadcast is brought to you by, once again, we the folks at wethepatriotshop.com/big. That's wethepatriotshop.com/big. Check them out there or call them. There you see the number, 518-538-2877. That's 518-538-2877. Ask about their grass-fed, hormone-free, best-tasting black Angus beef. Oh, buddy, get the backyard barbecue fired up and going with wethepatriotshop.com/big. And again, welcome to everyone that is out here listening to us this evening, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, X, or simulcast on BigPatriotRadio.com. That's right. Don't forget, we are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week there on Big Patriot Radio. Love to have all those folks. We have a ton. We are in triple digits already on Big Patriot Radio for this week. We also have podcasts during the week, not just Thursdays where I am simulcasting back to the radio, but on Mondays, we have Dave and Jordan Cox from Easley, South Carolina, the New America Movement at 7 and 9 p.m. You want to check them out. Hey, Sydney, good to see you there. And Duck Rider, glad to have you on here as well. Wednesday nights, rather, is the number one rated show, Corey Allen and the Overton Report. That is at 8 o'clock. And then in the 9 o'clock hour, he is on Wednesdays. Thursdays is here. Saturdays, brand new show for us at 7 o'clock p.m. on Saturdays. That is the Southern Sense Radio Show with Annie Ubellis, the Radio Chickadee. You're not going to want to miss that show. And then Sundays, and this gentleman's going to be here tonight. Andrew Southwick is on Sundays at 7 o'clock with Cutlure Crossroads. You're going to get to see him after a while, probably in the 8 o'clock hour. We'll talk about his new book that he's got out and some good stuff about Cutlure Crossroads. Don't forget to join us on Patreon.com. You see the crawler going down there. Actually, it's starting over here, and I can't ever do that. Going across the screen. Anyway, check us out on Patreon.com // Beaufort House of Cards. We'd love to have you join us on that family channel, the Patreon channel. Become a member of the Beaufort County House of Cards Big Patriot Radio Network to help keep independent news and journalism and media alive and well.
All the wickedness and filth this world has to offer.
Yeah! Rock music that shatters your bones. Big Patriot Radio.
That's some serious rock.
And you're responsible.
That's right. And the number one song this past week on BigPatriotRadio.com was Lainey Wilson and Smell Like Smoke. And the number one city and listeners, Columbia, South Carolina, Bluffton, and Greenville coming in second and third. And again, some folks from Gastonia, North Carolina to check it in this week. Glad to have you here with us on Big Patriot Radio.
Locked and loaded.
Let's go.
Big Patriot Radio. News, country pop, and classic rock.
Well, in about 7:15, 7:20, somewhere in there, we are scheduled to have South Carolina 1st Congressional District United States Congresswoman Nancy Mace with us here live on Big Patriot Radio and the House of Cards. Let's check and make sure we haven't had any, because we tried to do this last week. There were some scheduling conflicts. All still looks good, so we will hope to see her. Before we get started with that, last week we did another rundown on the Socialist Democrats who filed to run against the entire Beaufort County delegation to the State House of Representatives, and including our state senator, or one of our state senators, and Tom Davis. I wanted to do another one tonight, and this week on the list was Charity Owens, who is running against my good friend Bill Herb Kurzman for the House seat 118. However, and I'm not an expert by any stretch in social media, but we can't find that Charity has a website. No campaign page, no social media sites. So we're going to dig a little deeper. It may take a little while. Actually, I'm thinking about going by her business office and just saying, hey, here's my card if you don't know me. I assume she is serious about this, running against Bill Herb Kurzman. We want to find out more about her or the people she's hanging with. I don't know if she knows, that they are as socialist as they are. Maybe she's not. We're going to give her the benefit of the doubt. Again, I assume she's serious about this, but it doesn't, fully appear so. So more on that as we go forward. We got to do a little digging on her. Either our next show will have some information about her on there, or we'll just go ahead and move on to the next one on the list, which is Jeff Bradley, who is being opposed by, I believe you pronounce her name, Lizette Safaldi of Hilton Head Island. So we will dig into her as well. So there's a story brewing up in Columbia that bears telling. House Representative Marvin Pendarvis, Democrat lawyer from North Charleston, has been in the news lately, and it's not good news. Pendarvis, they say any news is great news to have your name mentioned. I don't know if I would take this one on that bet. So, Pendarvis has, and of course, allegedly, what I refer to, he has Murdaugh-ed himself. Let me explain about that. Pendarvis allegedly, again, he's a lawyer, settled a lawsuit for a former client of his in the client's name against the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office without the former client's knowledge or approval. Again, allegedly. Pendarvis, again, allegedly pulled off this deception by forging the signature of or on the settlement agreement of his client. Once the client uncovered the truth and haven't been privy to how did he do it, Pendarvis allegedly again attempted to bribe his former client into keeping silent about his Murdaugh-able behavior. Pendarvis attempted this bribe by one of the absolute dumbest, ridiculous, one of the stupid forms ever in the forms of bribery. This was dumb. He put in writing, and I guess we should still say allegedly because he hasn't been convicted, but it is in writing, a text message of the following, quote, how much you need the check for, Pendarvis wrote in this text message to his former client, contained in the former client's lawsuit, the civil suit rather. Quote, answer the question, man. How much? Pendarvis went on to say, quote, let's handle this shit. End quote. Pendarvis wrote in another text message, unsure if it was the same time or later or what that was all about. He said, quote, you're not telling me what you need. When you read this closely and understand the alleged crimes, because he said, you're not telling me what you need. So if you read that again and zero in, that's right, Cindy, I agree, should be prosecuted to the fullest, no matter who he is or what he is or where he lives or what he does. Absolutely. Anyway, you can feel the desperation in Pendarvis's voice. You're not telling me what you need. Okay, this is escalating quickly. You can feel the desperation in the writing of Pendarvis. And I mean, this guy isn't stupid. I mean, he passed the bar exam, so I mean, he's got intelligence. Doesn't look like he's got any common sense, but whatever he's got, he's not using it. Now, Fitz News has reported on this, and according to them, when the former client refused to respond to these these entities, these text messages, Pendarvis allegedly showed up at the home of his former client and told him, the stupidity keeps going. He showed up at the home, allegedly, of the former client and told him he had $50,000 in cash in a black bag. Money which he could give him right then and there, he said. I'll give it to you right now. Boom, 50 grand in the bag. Let's go. He added, allegedly, that he could secure another $25,000 and would write him a check to pay his mortgage off. All if the former client would agree not to sue Pendarvis, at least according to the complaint filed. Now, since this short time has passed, SLED, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, has confirmed that they are investigating Pendarvis for an unnamed crime based on a reference to them or for them from the 1st District Solicitor, David Pascoe. In a recent report from Fitz News, and another report, they claim that, quote, sources close to the investigation told the media outlet, Fitz News, this week that SLED is investigating reports from several other alleged victims of Pendarvis. More ominously, the agency, SLED, is reportedly investigating allegations that the powerful legislator may have had help, quotes, have had help in his efforts to blackmail Lewis, as well as defraud other current or former clients, end quote. That is a quote from the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division as written about in Fitz News. Now, this brings me to a point where we have talked about on here several times, and that is judicial reform. And we'll go into this a little bit later after our guests are here. Absolutely, Cindy, it does sound like that, and that's why I said he got Murdaughed, or he did a Murdaugh-able thing. You see what I'm saying? But absolutely, birds of a feather never fly far from each other, or whatever. Anyway, judicial reform. Okay, the more we dig, the more we find out about the need of judicial reform and these lawyer legislators. And I'm not bagging on lawyer legislators, not at all. I am bagging on the system that we use here in South Carolina to elect judges, which they did this week, by the way, is in dire need of reform. And again, we'll go into that a little bit later. Hell, when you have things like lawyer Pendarvis, Pendarvis's alleged crimes, with that going on, and of course, as Cindy said, the Murdaugh story, and the numerous times just over this past year alone, not calendar year, but fiscal year, or maybe even more than that, actually really since like 2020, 2019, a few lawyer legislators being in the news of the public eye has been something of, how should I say, normal news. It's not usual and customary, but it's becoming normal to find lawyer legislators possibly with some wrongdoing or alleged misconduct. And they're in the news, for those things, not for doing a bang up job. Everything has been the alleged nefarious situation here or there. One of the most outspoken members of on this issue in the House of Representatives is Republican House member Joe White of Newberry. Now, we have had Joe White, Representative White, on here before, and he has talked about how this was his, and still is, his number one platform issue, judicial reform. White and others who believe there should be distinct and separable powers of the judiciary and the legislature, along with having the judiciary voted into office by the voters. By the way, that's the people who have to come before these judges and not the lawyers who sit in front of them, vis-a-vis working a deal for the client. So when you sit down and you think about all this, it only makes sense that the people who are being judged by the judge should be elected by the judge. Isn't that kind of a similar way? You're to be tried by if it's a jury trial, by a jury of your peers. The same thing, if it's a judge doing the duty, I mean, there should be some kind of tie between the judge and those being judged, not the lawyer. But that's not how it is, at least here in South Carolina, and actually only one other state, and that is Virginia. So White, Representative White, and others have been roadblocked, just flat up roadblocked and stonewalled. There was even an article this week, I believe it was, that talked about the stonewalling of Representative White and some of his friends. Now, and this isn't happening all the time, not at all. At least the subject has been brought up. It's brought out, and it's been brought up. Representative White, Representative Rob Harris of Greenville or Spartanburg have proposed bill after bill, and there are others. I don't want to leave anybody out, but I can't go through the whole house. And it's a small number that have brought these up. And they've made small gains. Don't get me wrong. They have made small gains. They're gains, but they're small ones. Now, I have to caution people that, yes, I believe that all judges should be elected by the voters. You're not going to go from a system like we have right now, which none of them are elected by the voters, to 100% being elected by the voters because of the massive change in philosophies between the two. There has to be a go-between. I mean, I understand that. I realize that. And I think that can be where the governor's office and citizens, however many that is to be determined, but the governor's office have, X number that they elect or appoint rather. The judiciary isn't going to give it up 100%. So we got to take a little bit back at a time. And as you do this and you massage it and you work with it, and again, it takes time. It'll take several cycles of this type of change to get to where the electors get to, vote for the elected officials. Cindy, I have proposed changes to the guardian ad litem statute via my representatives of the people, by the people. That is another big topic that we could actually go on to for a lot of length of time on, is the guardian ad litem statute. And I want to bring a good friend of mine, Lee Grenade, back on when we do that. I want to go into guardian ad litemship, what we've seen in South Carolina, and what others have actually experienced through the problem of the guardian ad litem program. And yes, that is ripe. That is very ripe. It's like it's like a watermelon that is super green, and it's time to pick it like a cantaloupe. Guardian ad litem is right there with it. So these gains we're having, they're small, but they're little ones. Legislators need to keep up the pressure. Keep up the pressure on their colleagues. Keep up the pressure on the judiciary. In South Carolina, we have the judiciary is headed up, chaired by a friend of mine, a local Beaufort County resident, Weston Newton. He is a lawyer, legislator, chair of the judiciary, probably the most prominent position in the House next to Speaker or Ways and Means chair. And I have this, it's not like he hasn't heard this before. We need to keep that civil, constant, steady, and professional pressure up onto those legislators. Cindy, lawyer legislators should not be permitted to select the judge. I agree. I agree with that. And there has been some people in the House, some in the Senate, but not as many yet. Some in the House have said, well, why do you say that? Usually the answer is, well, because of the impropriety. And let me just stop there, because and I've heard this, some have said, give me an example of an impropriety. Well, we're not going to go down that road of bashing people. We can stop at the point of it's too easy. The candy is being given to them. Are all lawyer legislators, going to abuse the system nefariously and totally use it to gain personal privilege or personal benefit? Of course not. Is there any of them? Absolutely. That is a human nature thing if you don't have integrity, in my opinion. So why give them the opportunity to take that candy? Don't put that in front of them. Absolutely. Keep up working on your legislators, Cindy, where you live, and folks, get involved like Cindy is. We got to keep the pressure up. They will listen. And let me tell you, there are many, many folks on the opposite side of the aisle who have mastered this. And I warned Republicans about this. I guess it was probably 18 years ago. I made a comment to my good friend who is now passed away, very smart, politically minded Joe Iacco here in Bluffton. And I said to him, while I diametrically am different than most Democrats, we Republican people need to wise up to what they're doing because it's working. Getting people together, coalescing around an issue, door knocking, telephone banking, all of those things. You better and now we see it. Now we see it. Then this is something. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that complaining, if you want to call it that. Democrats are excellent about that, to keep the pressure up. They keep the pressure up. So many Republicans say, I sent a letter in, I made the phone call, I made the email. I don't have time. I don't have time anymore. Life gets in the way, but don't expect anything to come from it. I'm just saying that. Hey, Renee, curious how Representative Newton can justify a change in today's agenda scheduled for 9 a.m. on judicial reform. It was changed at 3:30 yesterday. Well, that is a fantastic question. I see we have another one here. Many of us had rearranged schedules to go into that meeting. Okay, so I had heard earlier that this happened. We had internet problems here in Bluffton and Pritchardville area, so I was offline a lot of today, and I had wanted to watch that. Obviously, I didn't know about it until way late today. But that's a question that should, at least can be asked and hopefully answered. Why did you change the meeting at 3:30? That is not user friendly. I don't care what the excuse is. That's not a user friendly excuse. I know someone who was going there to speak. I don't know if they made it there and had to turn around. I know that would ultimately piss me off to no end. I can say that. And I understand that it was changed till like the 24th. So that is, we'll keep going with the pressure. You got to keep the pressure up. Let them know that you're not going to stand for this. I certainly don't mind. And matter of fact, if somebody will shoot me an email to remind me, I will certainly, absolutely, and there's my email address, send Representative Newton, Chairman Newton, and the rest of the judiciary, send them my thoughts on changing the meeting the afternoon, an hour and a half before the end of business. That's not cool. That's not cool at all. No doubt the corruption, especially with Mandy Kimmons, lawyer, legislator, now judge. Absolutely. Absolutely. We have talked about that on this show multiple times, Renee. Matter of fact, now I know why you're saying that. I think we have spoken once before, and I apologize for not recognizing that at first. We have some stories have been going on for a while about Mandy Kimmons. We've been looking into some things with another outlet of ours that we are tight with up in Charleston. And we're going to have some more on that. It'll probably be summer by the time that comes along. But there is some concern with that particular situation, Mandy Kimmons, how she got elected, when she was elected, when she left the House, that whole thing. And we're going to keep going with that. Perhaps we're beginning to scare them. Cindy, I think if you look at, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, the stuff that went on in the House yesterday at the judicial election, when one of the candidates who, for all intents and purposes, seemed to be a shoo-in, James Smith, didn't get in. And I think that was pressure put on, beginning by the Freedom Caucus, added to by citizens, much like all of you watching this. That pressure got, and it's election year. We talked about this in January. That pressure was added to by the pressure of the ballot. Some of the Republicans who, would probably and actually have said they were going to vote for James Smith, saw the writing on the wall, saw the election, their primary coming, the end, the general in November and so forth. And that may have changed some voices and some votes. So all that stuff is excellent. We got to keep the pressure on. Yes, there were, Renee says there was approximately 25 people signed up, which is huge. How many times have we watched or been to a hearing in the South Carolina Senate or the South Carolina House, and the opposite side of what the normal folks, usual folks on here are thinking, and it's the opposite side. And they're in mass. I've seen it here on the school board level. I've seen it here on the county council level. And we see it almost weekly on the hearing side of the House and the Senate. So that's awesome that there were 25 people there. It's terrible and it sucks that they changed the meeting. Did they know about people were coming? I can almost guarantee you they knew that. Almost guarantee that. But that's a good thing. Let's see here. Cindy belong the same group together, reform. Boop. There you go, folks. Absolutely. Thank you for being involved with that. I think that is fantastic, and I applaud your efforts. All right. So anyway, keeping the pressure up. You got to keep up the work and not give up on what the voters of South Carolina want, and that overwhelmingly is the ability to vote on and choose judges for the bench, which brings into play, and it is half past the hour, waiting on Nancy Mace, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, to come on, and we'll get her in here soon, I hope, which brings into play the topic of keeping lawyers in check, if you will, and how they are to be held accountable. Easy question, and the answer to that is, well, the South Carolina Bar. That's who they, report to, answer to. That's the place where lawyers can, that's where they get their direction. They get their hand smacked, all that kind of stuff. Well, when you start looking at that topic, one could ask, and quite often generally does, ask, well, who watches the bar? The bar is made up of lawyers. They're overseeing lawyers. So who watches the bar? Where's that oversight? And the answer is apparently no one. They are what appears to be, and I checked this with a friend of mine who's involved in this a lot, self-regulating. That's probably the best way to put it. No outside oversight. Well, who is the head lawyer, the chief prosecutor, if you will, in the state? That's Attorney General Alan Wilson. That's the guy who spent tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars. It was alleged campaign dollars, allegedly, for a birthday party for himself at Willie Bryce Stadium there in Columbia. Cindy says, you as a citizen need to do your due diligence. Absolutely. Do the research, because you will probably end up knowing that the bills in front of you more than the legislators, because the majority of them do not read the bills for whatever reason. Don't have time, don't want to, whatever. They don't read them. South Carolina Bar is not the answer. Independent third party needs to do that. Very good points there. Very, very good points. So, it seems that the process to file a complaint is that, here's how you got to do it. The bar tells you to file complaints through what I'm assuming is the grievance process. That keeps your complaint internal. I'm really not surprised. Brittany, thank you for being on the show. I'm not surprised, and that's not, I don't care what the problem is. You as a citizen should not be told, sorry, I can't help you. Even if that's true, sorry, I can't help you, but let me send you here, or let's do that. I don't accept, and I would not accept, sorry, I can't help you. And we'll talk more about that as we go along. So, complaint's going to be internal. You're going to keep it to yourself, or rather internally, because you've gone through the grievance. Sources have showed us that states like Pennsylvania, for instance, and let me do another check here real quick. Pennsylvania, in Pennsylvania, in the Keystone State, they must take criminal activity references. I want to make sure I say this correctly. Take criminal activity references directly to law enforcement. Now, that's not completely ideal, but it does appear to be better. In South Carolina, the bar gets your complaint, as I said earlier, and has conversations or meetings internal, something of that sort, and then decides on internal private discipline. Now, we learned under FOIA recently that the South Carolina bar was asked under FOIA, how many lawyers, not names, just lawyers, how many numbers were referred to law enforcement. Anybody have a guess what that answer would be? How many lawyers have been referred to law enforcement according to the South Carolina bar under FOIA? Let's see. G. Dunn in 2008, American Bar recommended an independent body oversee complaints. Chief Justice Toll declined. Wow, was not aware of that. That is very interesting. Yes, Cindy, we need transparency. They talk about it, but they don't do it. The system does blur the separation of powers, fundamental principle of democracy. Lawyers who are also legislators do have the ability to influence the appointment and decisions of judges, thereby undermining the independence and impartiality of the judiciary. That is a great way of saying pretty much what I said earlier, that, why give them the candy? Why give them the ability to do that? Don't do that. Don't do that. All forms of government tell you they cannot get involved in family court. Family court, another big issue along the lines of Mandy Kimmons that we will talk about. Bias rulings, lack of transparency, all part of the problem in the judicial system. And yes, public trust. Public trust in the judiciary in South Carolina is at an all-time low, I'm afraid. So the answer to that question under FOIA was how many lawyers, not names, only numbers, that were referred to law enforcement. Their answer was, we have no answer for that. We have no answer for that. Wow. So, like Cindy just said, I mean, Murdaugh could have been one, and Pendarvis certainly could have been another, if found to be true. I mean, I have information that says that had Murdaugh been referred to law enforcement from the bar, that may have been prevented. Is that not some kind of stark contrast? Wow. Maybe this deal with Pendarvis doing his Murdaugh-able deed, could that have been prevented? It's possible. It's possible. So there are there is a document that I want to show you. And let me see if I can pull that up here. Here it is. Let's go to that document. Make sure you can see it there on your screen. All right. Yeah, it's there. All right. So let's go back to this document. And what you see here, this is the annual report of lawyer discipline in South Carolina for the year, fiscal year 22-23. Now, I highlighted some things of interest. I mean, it's all interesting, but I highlighted some things that, may really catch your eye. Total complaints received in 22 to 23 was 3,099. I don't know how many lawyers there are in South Carolina. I'm sure there's a crap ton, but still 3,099 complaints. Wow. I mean, holy cow. And again, I don't know how many there are. Are there 10,000 lawyers, 20,000? I don't know. But 3,100 of them had complaints, and they're pending and received. So I'm assuming there's no double dipping there. I would certainly hope not. If you look at the not dismissed, the ones that are closed but not dismissed, 28. Closed due to death of lawyer, 35. But there were 28 of them that were closed but never dismissed. I mean, how do you get away with that? I couldn't get away with that. There was 15 disbarred. It's not dismissed, but they've been disbarred. Amazing numbers. Moving on. This right here will show you, like, what kind of lawyer are they having the problems with? Is it a law practitioner, one or law firm, group, solo, John Q. Public Esquire, public defender's office, prosecutor from the solicitor's office. Other government would be like your county attorney or town attorney. Hell, guardian ad litem shown up on the list, but 34% were from a law firm, multiple member law firm. 49, almost 50%, just a hair by, and this obviously makes sense, and this, I'm not shocked, is the client making the complaint. What is strange is the opposing party even made complaints 25% of the time. The case type, the complaints are coming in overwhelmingly by criminal, almost 40%, criminal cases, 20% domestic violence, domestic abuse type of thing. But criminal cases are the most referred to the bar. This next page, that's nothing big deal there. Let's keep on going. Lawyers being monitored. Again, I found this to be a little interesting. Yes, back up here we had 3,099 lawyers, or cases rather, 3,099 cases of lawyers getting in trouble, okay, for one reason or another, true or false. Those are the complaints. All right, let's go down here, and we see that being monitored is 107. Again, I don't know how many, if there's 200,000 lawyers in South Carolina and 100 are being monitored, I guess it's not that big a deal. But I don't think there is. In my little brain, lawyers of the count of 107 seem to be a little high in my book. But let's take it a bit further and go to the Supreme Court. Now, these figures, these disciplinary orders, you see here, these figures represent the number of orders issued by the Supreme Court, not the number of complaints. Some orders conclude multiple complaints. How many orders of discipline for complete dismissal were there? 0. Letter of caution. Don't do that shit again. 0. Admonition. You've been warned, blah, 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 blah. I'm admonishing you for this behavior. 0. Yes, there was 1 public reprimand, 3 suspended, 3 disbarred, you see on and so forth. But nobody was dismissed. Nobody had a letter on their record, and nobody was admonished for discipline. And then complaints referred to the Supreme Court. There was 22 resolved and 9 pending at the end of the fiscal year. Again, I just find that those numbers to be quite shocking, to be quite honest with you. Quite shocking. So anyway, that is what it is. Let's check back here. I think this is where I left off. My new best friend, lawyers who are legislators, do you have the ability to influence? We already went to that one. We did that one. And we did that one. Let's keep on going down here. No government entity wants to take responsibility for another if there's a problem. And that's true. And there are ways that we can stop that. And the beginning way is to fix it at the ballot box. And I was having a conversation with someone today talking about, good people that get into office that turn sour. I think everybody goes into office with a good intention. And as I was telling somebody earlier today on the phone, I said, as I've mentored other politicians, I continue to say to them, remember when you wanted to run for office, it was because you wanted to represent the people in your community, your district, your region, your whatever, your whatever you're representing. You wanted to represent those people. If you keep that in the forefront of your mind, that I am here in office, whatever that office is, to represent the people to the government. The problem is when politicians from the school board to Congress to where, all in between, when they say they lose sight of that and they become the feeling that they are the government. Our very own county council chairman said that very thing. He said, I am the government. No, you're not the government. You are supposed to represent the people. So you can fix this problem by continually going to the ballot box and making that change and telling those elected people, we voted you in to represent us. You choose to represent them. We are going to vote you out. It's nothing personal. It just is what it is. Kennens is a prime example of failure within our judicial system on multiple levels. Again, we're going to be diving into her over the summer, probably. Public reprimand for crooked lawyers, free advertising. Agreed. Absolutely. Fox in the hen house. The way South Carolina votes in judges is a reflection of total incompetence and self-serving and short-sighted. Laughable if it wasn't so devastating. Couldn't agree more. I'm a good friend of Ivy. How are you? Lawyer legislators should not be allowed to choose judges, period. I agree. But again, we got let's take little victories and let's keep pushing, because you're not going to go from, nobody electing judges to the voters doing it all at one time. I'm trying to be real about that, even though that's what I want to. I want to be realistic. I try to live in a real time situation that I know that won't happen. I just know it won't happen. So I don't want to, pontificate that it could, because it won't. We've got to get there. The issues raise serious concerns about the fairness and integrity of the South Carolina judicial system. I could not agree more. We are coming up on, looks like quarter till the hour here on Beaufort County's House of Cards.
Introducing to you.
You're on House of Cards, live on Facebook and YouTube.
It's going down.
Locked and loaded with the truth.
Just went back and no word from Nancy Mace or her comms director. So I don't know if they are having an issue getting on or what that's about, but they know how to get here. So we took a look at that data, and that data, even though in the FOIA, the bar says no comment or they won't answer. I'm not sure which way that they said that, but there's the data you see right there. And that makes me question them even more. It makes me question them more. So now you see where the whole Pendarvis, Murdaugh crimes, they are really intertwined. They're intertwined in the need for judicial reform. I hope you see that too. I thought all of her staff quit. Well, that was the report I got, that they did too, but I'm sure they were replaced rather frequently. And I have been in contact with her communications director and the Congresswoman. So somebody's working there. I don't know. I just read a review on AVVO regarding Kemmons, but I was the only mom jailed for not paying OC attorney fees. Would love to talk more about that, Renee. I don't want to go too far into that without having all my ducks in a row. But your story, your daughter's story, is the one I want to go into. So let's go down here just a moment. Don't forget, we have author Andrew Southwick. He wrote this book right here, More Than Reconciliation. If you haven't read that, you're going to be entertained with how this book is on such a level that everybody can understand, and it makes so much sense. He's a podcaster, broadcaster, film maker, all around good dude. He's a minister. You want to catch this, so we'll have him on here in a little bit. There has been, on another note, but is very similar with this Pendarvis deal, there's been great conversation for the past 2 weeks or so regarding State Treasurer Curtis Loftis and the South Carolina Senate committee that has been placing unabridged blame on him for the $1.8 billion of surplus and the fact that no one knows where it came from or where it is. Now, just so you know, I have reached out, talked to him several times, the treasurer's office, asked him to come on the show. They wanted to vet the show, and I sent them copies of the show and so forth. I don't know if he'll be able to do it or not. Hopefully he will. We'd like to hear this come straight from the treasurer. But, you know, this outlet and many others actually have made it perfectly clear that in our feeling, and it's not just mine alone, it's not the treasurer's responsibility. Rather, it's the responsibility of the South Carolina comptroller. Now, you remember a couple years ago, South Carolina comptroller David Ekstrom, he came under fire. There was, was it 3 point some odd billion dollars? Didn't know where it was or what it was and where it was appropriated or where it was spent from, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, he ended up, he got pressure to quit. He got pressured to quit, and he did. Several people ran for that job, wanted to be, the new comptroller. One of them was a gentleman by the name of Kirkman Finley III, who was a successful businessman in this state, and is actually now, because he wasn't picked for the job, he's a successful GOP businessman, very forthwith business guy. Kirkman Finley III. He's running for the state house now. The governor did pick the guy who worked for David Ekstrom, who is a Democrat. I mean, he doesn't hide it. I think his last name is Gaines or something like that. Who may be a great guy, maybe a super guy. That's just not normal that, a Republican governor would hire someone for the state comptroller who's of a different political mindset. But yet I digress. So, we don't believe, this outlet and some others, we don't believe it's the treasurer's job. It's the comptroller. So what does the comptroller do? Basically, let's go back. There are 3 steps. One is the auditor, the state auditor. The auditor sends out, the tax bills, the tax notices. He puts the value on there. The treasurer collects the money. That's what the treasurer used to be called, a tax collector. That's what they do. They also invest the state's money. Then you have that third wheel, which is the comptroller. The comptroller manages the books, the debits and the credits. That's what the comptroller does. So when you look at it this way, much like in your counties, the auditor, sets the tax or sets the tax on the rolls, issues the tax, the treasurer collects the tax, and the assessor is the one who manages what rate it gets assessed at, so to speak. And obviously county council has a role. But anyway, on the state level, that's how that's divvied up. So how can they say that Curtis Loftis has a responsibility in knowing where this money, why did we have a $1.8 billion surplus? I don't really understand why that's his problem or his fault. So the comptroller manages the books. Treasurer cuts checks, receives deposits, manages, the investments. But then we need to enter the next party, and that is Senator Larry Grooms of Berkeley County, Republican from Berkeley County, who has been straight on balls to the wall in condemning Loftis. I mean, he took him on in a committee hearing like Loftis had picked up somebody else's dog and cat. I mean, he berated the guy, browbeat him, beat him down again. Grooms wasn't the only one. Margie Bright Matthews, Democrat from Colleton County, also jumped on that bandwagon, and she just beat him and that horse was dead. Then, I don't know, day before yesterday, at the well of the Senate, Grooms took to the well in the floor and brought members of his committee down for another lashing of the treasurer. Now, I'm going to stop right there and make a correction to something that I said last week. I was incorrect in stating that immediately the money should be given back to the taxpayer. The $1.8 billion to the taxpayer. I said, if you did that, divided by the number of taxpayers, which is 1.44 million in this state, everybody would get about $1,250 in a check or a rebate or whatever, or credit from the state. Before doing that, there is a step involved, and they have to know where the money came from. Is it federal money or is it taxpayer money? Well, federal money is taxpayer money. Yes, I understand that. However, if it was delivered to the state by the federal government, it is called and considered federal money. You don't mix federal and state monies. That's called commingling. Beaufort County has been famous for doing that in the DSN department. But anyway, before they cut checks to send back that $1.8 billion, they do need to understand, was any of that $1.8 billion federal dollars? That is important. So I stand corrected. They need to have it audited, and then separate the two. Why wasn't it done before? Because that's the guy who ran the books. Ekstrom didn't do his job. That's not Curtis Loftis's problem. If it is found to be taxpayer money, the money belongs to the taxpayer. The money belongs to the taxpayer. Now, Grooms, his remarks at the well were a 16-page report that he authored just the other day. And he made his remarks about, quote, people saying that money should go back to taxpayers. That's how he started this off multiple times. And as a matter of fact, and it was kind of funny. I'm sure Larry doesn't watch this show. Maybe somebody gave him a poke and said, man, COVID is right in your ass, because I was and I am. But he kept talking about, there's people talking about this in the media that we should just give the money back, blah, 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 blah. It humored me for whatever. Anyway, his remarks were somewhat condescending of taxpayers, to the taxpayers. Something like, well, first of all, anything condescending to a taxpayer, you as taxpayers should take exception with that. His framework of the wording was disingenuous. Nevertheless, Senator Grooms said on the floor, and here's what he said about you. Here's what he said about you, the taxpayer. Quote, there is a veneer of righteousness that has been breached by the absolute facts. It's an issue of honor. I do think he should resign. Wow, that takes balls. Loftis replied to those comments by Grooms and his ad hoc committee, or not ad hoc, but his committee, with the following quote from the state treasurer. He said, quote, it is unfortunate to see a handful of state senators more interested in character assassination than solving problems that affect our state. Now, again, this is Loftis saying this the other day after Grooms and his committee members went to the floor of the Senate at the well to publicly announce how terrible Loftis is. Let me keep reading. Fortunately, most state leaders realize that problems are usually best solved at a conference table, or I'm sorry, this is by Loftis, solved at a conference table, not by grandstanding in front of TV cameras. Again, this is referring to Grooms, his Hollywood-style approach at the well in the Senate. In his report, Larry Grooms goes as far to put in a recommendation that there will be a constitutional amendment on the ballot to make the treasurer's office an appointed one rather than elected by you and me. Sounds kind of like Beaufort County, doesn't it? Now, unless I misquoted him, and I don't believe I did, but if I did, you can't just arbitrarily put something on a ballot. That has to go through votes in the House and the Senate. It has to have a 2/3 majority. Not a simple majority, but a major majority, 2/3 vote to get it onto a referendum. I don't think there's enough guts or yay votes rather in the total General Assembly to make that happen. Now, Grooms and others have been making their rounds in news reports about the treasurer, as the treasurer explained, and how he was going to post. This is what he said. Grooms said the treasurer was going to post sensitive, this is quote, he was going to post sensitive information that have crippled our state's economy, etc. According to Loftis, that simply is not true. He said that is a lie. Senator McElveen, Democrat of Sumter, asked the treasurer during his hours-long beratement that have you been posting everything that was constitutionally supposed to be posted? The treasurer said, well, not the sensitive stuff, but if you say do it, then I will do it. Well, Larry Grooms and his lackeys took that, as best we see, and ran with it, insinuating that Loftis was going to publish bank account numbers. That's how disingenuous I feel. Others in my same position feel that Grooms and his committee took this a little too far to the left. Larry, you got to bring it back. He didn't say he was threatening, as you insinuate. He said to McElveen, if you want me to do it, I'll do it, but I haven't been doing it. If that's what you want to do, he turned to his staffer and said, put it out there. Now, Loftis has been long saying he was not going to seek re-election when he's up in 2026, which apparently, I'm assuming, has nothing to do with this. I'm assuming, but since he came out saying that, and it hasn't been that long ago, but he has been saying that, and I guess he's been there, 2004 or something like that, 20 years, give or take, that it's time. It's time for, he knows it's time for him to move on to greener pastures, and you shouldn't have one person in one position for that long. And give me just a chance here. Let's I'm going to send them a note, like, what is up? Anyway, so anyway, he said, Loftis has said, I'm done. 26, I'm out. Well, since then, there have been rumors across the state, been heating up. I'm involved in let's call it a consortium of some folks who discuss this type of thing. And the name that has been coming up over and over is Beaufort County Treasurer Maria Walls as a possible candidate to take, to run for the seat of South Carolina State Treasurer. I've reached out to Mrs. Walls, haven't heard back. I can tell you this right now. She has a fantastic reputation across the state. She's well known across the state, has done a magnificent job in her own right. Well, what about the problems in Beaufort County? Yeah, I know those problems are there. Some of those or most of those are not self-inflicted, and there may be some, and all that's in a court deal right now, so I don't want to go into it. But for that job, her name has been coming up, and we'll let you know once we hear more about that. But that's going to be coming up. It's 2026, so he's got just a little bit left.
Everything that rocks is right here.
Let's rock.
With Patriot Radio.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, it is high atop. Well, actually, it's about 5 after 8 o'clock, and our second guest has arrived in the green room, loaded with tonight. We only have sparkling water, non-alcoholic wine, and some of Mike's best brownies. That's a big hit back there in the green room. And I'm going to bring him on here in just a second. I want you to know this guest. He is an accomplished church planter. He's a minister, father, husband, podcaster, broadcaster, and now author. His latest book, right here, I showed it to you earlier, More Than Reconciliation. This is incredible. We'll talk more about this. It's called More Than Reconciliation, Coming to the Table of Grace. It's available now on Amazon.com. I would love for you to join me in welcoming my friend Andrew Southwick to the show. Hey Andrew.
Good to meet you in kind of in person. Thanks for having me on.
Man, it is my pleasure. And yes, we and I have been, or you and I have been talking over email for it seemed like the better part of a year or so, but it is great to finally meet you, even though it's through a camera.
It is. Yeah. And it's good for, always glad Culture Crossroads on Big Patriot Radio on Sundays. And so it's good to put some, at least a video virtual face to all the emails and messages and all that good stuff. So it's good to be
Absolutely. Here. Absolutely. And that's right. Folks, I know everybody watching here, I'm sure you have tuned into bigpatriotradio.com. Every night of the week almost, we have podcasts on Sundays at 7 o'clock. Andrew Southwick and Culture Crossroads is on for a full hour, and it's always a great show. It's kind of like two shows into one, so to speak. But it's a huge hit, and I encourage everybody to go and listen to that on Sundays at 7. We'll talk about that in a second. But brother, this book right here, this book is amazing. I told you the other day in emails, like, it takes me a while, even though it's not that big of a read. It takes me a while, but man, this is a great read. Without going too deep into it, because I got some specific questions, but tell folks a little bit about this book and a little bit, or a lot about Andrew Southwick and your story.
Sure. Well, you mentioned, I've been a pastor for many years and planted churches in that time. And prior to that, a musician. I've had so many different lives. It's incredible, but and God's been good. But it was at a church plant, which was in Central Florida. And that's where where me and my family still live. But if you remember the Colin Kaepernick stuff, where a quarterback for the 49ers at the time, he started kneeling for the national anthem in NFL games. And then it came out, it was a protest to police brutality and racism and white supremacy and, the systemic racism and all these things. And the initial germ was, why do we, and when I say we, Christians first, because I was thinking as a pastor at the time, how would I teach? How would I lead my congregation through these things? Where can I bring them to God's word to show them how God thinks of any of these situations? And and so the first question I had was, well, are we accepting the wrong premise? Like, for example, when we talk about something like white supremacy or systemic racism that's bent toward white supremacy, when we argue on that premise, well, no, we're not. I have plenty of black friends, or whatever it is we want to say. We are actually giving mental assent, or we're giving some agreement to that premise, i.e., what we have now, critical race theory. White people are inherently racist, and even if they don't know it, they are, and all this kind of stuff. And we're seeing a new segregation come into our culture for political worldview, for all kinds of things. And and at that time, I didn't see it even progressing to where it is now. But I thought, we need to take this conversation back to the grounds of truth and out of Scripture. And really, what did Jesus do? What did Jesus' people do? What did the church do? How did they approach areas of human relations and relationships between different people groups? It's always a difficult time to share cultures with other people. And that's one of the big points I make in the book, is that we spend too much time looking at the condition of people's skin, the condition of their souls. And what we're really talking about is cultural differences. We might blame it on skin color or whatever else we want to blame it on, but it's cultural differences. How do we overcome those? And what Jesus does and what the church is, it's this little mini, albeit imperfect because of sin, that we have as human beings, but a glimpse of God's community in heaven, where whatever the injustice going on in the world, and we know there's plenty, and there are plenty based on quote unquote racial lines or people group lines. When you are in the family of God, you have a seat at the table as a co-heir to everything that Christ has. And there's no other community like that on earth. There's no other community in history that's been like that. And when you look in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul, his writings from the book of Romans through the book of Philemon, 13 letters, all of them were about how different cultures come together. And when those cultures come together, they come together and form a new Christ culture. In fact, the working title of the book was Christ Culture, in that this is a new culture. It's not one of this world. It's something that can only exist through the work of Jesus Christ and in his people. And so I wanted to get that across, because when we argue about these things and we talk about them from the world's perspective or from a political perspective, no matter what your ideology is, Democrat, Republican, conservative, progressive, whatever, we always end up looking for who's to blame and how do I make them pay? Well, that has no redemption, that has no future, that has no hope. All it serves to do is who can one up the other. And we're seeing that now. We've seen that in the past, and we're seeing it again currently today.
You know, I think the thing that, I was telling you that I didn't tell you this. As I was reading the book, there are so many similarities in what you were writing and what I have lived in 57 years, that I found myself going down a highway or a bunny hole as I was reading, and I had to bring myself back to get into your mind and your pen. But you talk about something in the book that I've mentioned hundreds of times on here and in other settings for one reason or another, and that is labels. Like someone saying, I am a white man, or he is a black guy, or look at those 3 little brown Indian children, something like that. Right. And I have gone there and I try to make a conscious change, because I truly believe you and we're just men. I'm a man. Your children are just children. My grandkids, we just had number 10. They're just the grandkids. Why and when did we as humans get tangled up in these labels? Is it an involvement of societies and cultures, or is it something that we don't know?
I would suggest to you that started right after sin came in the world in the Garden of Eden. When you look at so Adam and Eve, they're in the garden, everything's perfect, and they're able to walk with God. Eve is tempted by the serpent and deceived. The Bible says Adam was there with her, and Eve eats the fruit, passes it to Adam. He eats it. All of a sudden, they look at each other. They see they're naked. They're ashamed. They run and hide. They're afraid of God. They're afraid of each other. God asks some questions. First, he asks, "Where are you?" And then he says, "Well, what did you do?" Now, of course, God, like any parent, when their kid disobeys, he already knows the answer clearly. But what's the first thing that Adam did? He blamed Eve. So he's already putting a label on her. She's the problem. Now, what is racism but saying they're the problem? And why? Well, because of their skin color, or sexism, or whatever ism we want to have, whatever preferential treatment we want to give to another to justify ourselves. We've been doing this since the beginning of time because the thing is, if we go for justification without Christ and his payment for sin, the best we can do is put someone else down. And to do that, we have to really demonize them and vilify them to the point where they have no intrinsic value. See abortion, for example. So if we can dehumanize them, if we can take their value away, then it becomes permissible to treat them the way we want to treat them to justify ourselves. That started all the way in the garden, and it's been repeating itself throughout history in different forms.
Very true. And, I, over the years, I've done a lot of things. I wish I could have gone back and changed some of the things. And there is nobody here that really can't say that. But I guess I'm glad I did the way that I did, because I wouldn't be where I am without doing it. And, you know, I've sat many times as a politician, a business owner, and I really want to listen to people. Even though I like to talk a lot, but I want to listen to them. And on the subject of what we're talking about with labels, or what I was talking about, and I hear people to this day, they'll insert an adjective or a color, and I find myself going, you know, why are we doing that? I found myself, you know, over the years, my own self, after speaking, thinking to myself, you know, why did I do that? I remember in my first marriage, my best man, you know, was had more melanin in his skin than I did. I didn't refer to Danny as, well, this is my black friend, Danny. Danny was just Danny. But it's interesting how things move. And, you know, I remember it wasn't that long ago, church, my wife now and I went to, I really can relate to this. The pastor was saying, he said, look, I am as messed up and mixed up as the next guy, and that's okay. But what's not okay is to stay that way. So we've all, and that just really hit home. So I want to play devil's advocate here for just a second. And this is brutally honest and legitimate questions. Do you find anything appalling, and maybe appalling is not the right descriptor, but let's call it appalling, with institutions like the NAACP, National Association for Advancement of Colored People, yes. HBCU, Historically Black Colleges, Universities, United Negro College Fund. Now, when I say appalling, I mean that in the sense of this. Obviously, there is no NAAWP or, you know, for white people advancement, or HP, Hispanic, or HWCUs, or the United White College Fund. If there were those, I think we could all agree, oh my gosh, that is the most racially divided thing there is. But why do we still have that? Why can't there, if we're truly going to address the problem that I'm just a man, you're just a man, we're both sinners, and we want to go to heaven, and Jesus died for our sins on the cross. When are we going to get away from those labels?
There are two things at play in that. So taking an organization, institution like the NAACP. Now, one of the things I write in my book is that, for example, things like affirmative action, I find that to be more racist than someone who just comes out and says, I don't like you because you're black. Why? Right. Because something like affirmative action, or for example, even some of the things that our politicians say, when it comes to how they're going to lift up the poor black and brown people, who somehow, you know, we're able to do all the same great things that everybody else can do, but we can't get a license to vote. That's somehow racist. I mean, you know, or an ID, I should say, an identification. Like we're too dumb for that. You see some of the schools. I just saw in Oregon a few months ago, they suspended standardized testing for black and brown students, but not for the white kids. Right. And I talked about it on my show, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Well, but what premise does that say? That says that you, because of your skin color, that is our leadership institution saying you can't do this because of your skin color, so on and so forth. Now that's racism, no matter what you say.
Yes.
Institutions like NAACP, these other ones that we talked about, they can be used, some of them more so than others, for those purposes. I think at the same time, though, we also have to remember that different cultures, like for example, just with skin color, we know it's melanin, right? More or less melanin in your skin. But every human being biologically is a shade of brown. You have brown skin, I have brown skin, it's lighter, it's darker. Who but God could create all these different shades of brown? Yeah. You know what I mean? So instead of celebrating those things as actually a celebration of God for his creativity, it becomes now we're going to pretend to celebrate your quote unquote diversity by reinforcing the narrative that because you are different than white, you are necessarily disadvantaged. You necessarily have a learning impediment. You necessarily have a hard time fitting in, et cetera, et cetera. And only we, government, or only our favorite institutions can lift you out of that poverty. Of course, and this could be a poverty of the mind, it can be a poverty of money, it can be a poverty of opportunity, whatever it might be. But have you noticed all those same talking points come around election cycle after election cycle, because ultimately they're not incentivized to change any of those things. Otherwise, you wouldn't need them once the problem is fixed. So we are not actually interested in solving these problems. What we're interested in doing is refostering them and repackaging them, because they are good, they are useful for people whose desire is raw power, to use those things to prey on the vulnerabilities, to prey on even some of our own ignorance, and to not reading past the headlines, to trade our liberty for their power. Because and this is true, it doesn't matter if it's racism, doesn't matter if it's taxes or economy. In fact, my show this week's going to be on taxes and economy. When the government's coming in and saying we're the solution, you know that really what they're really offering is you trade me more of your liberty, and in exchange we'll have more power over you. Doesn't matter what it is, and that's why these problems remain to this day. And they don't want to fix them. They can't fix them, because they're also, I believe, many of our leaders, their hands are dirty in setting up the very systems that they decry today. But those systems have nothing to do really with white supremacy or black supremacy or anything else. It has to do with centralized supremacy and the rule of you and me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Matter of fact, in your book, you make a point to say, and again, I totally agree with this, that some people are teaching a theory today that you should fight racism with racism. And again, I unequivocally agree with you, and that is the completely wrong thing to do. Matter of fact, one of our listeners and myself are the two complainants here in Beaufort County, South Carolina, over the last 2 years, where we put up a list. She had 96, I had 97 pieces of literature that they called them literature that we felt need to be put in another part of the library in our public schools. That, and I know you've all had that down in Florida. Yeah. You may have heard me just say she had 96, the other complainant, and I had 97. That different book, my number 97 was by an author named Ibram Kendi. Who wrote, he wrote a Kendi, not Kinsey. I think is a Kendi, right?
Yeah, Kendi.
Okay. So he wrote the book Stamped. That, in my opinion, is driving the racial wedge between all races deeper and deeper. And in his book, in his writings, his musings, he says that, white people, I think you may have said this, are born inherently racist. I can't fathom that kind of mentality. What if you had the chance to sit, Ibram Kendi down beside you? What would you say to someone that believes that kind of thinking?
I don't know if there's anything you can say, because, and I don't want to speak for Ibram X. Kendi, so I want to be careful, because here's the other thing. Ibram X. Kendi, who I disagree with up and down on a variety of issues, most importantly this one, is still a creation of God. And here's the problem. And this is the temptation we all fall into. Ibram X. Kendi also wrote Anti-Racist Baby and that kind of thing. And so he's been popularizing and systematizing a lot of these things. And then we implement them in culture in different ways. Well, and how I used to be, and I share a little bit about this in the book as well, that, I used to be very, well, let's face it, I used to really want everybody to think like me, and I have a saying, I have a saying, right. But what I would do then is, if they didn't think like me, particularly politically, I would make value judgments about them as a person. And so I'm always careful to do that, especially with authors or thinkers like Kendi, because it would be easy for me to dismiss him and say, well, he just lost and there's no redemption. The first thing that I do and do is pray for people like that, because they need Jesus. That's really, none of this stuff matters And in fact, what I contend is that Jesus is the one who transforms the hearts. There is no law, there is no legislation, there is no slogan, there is no class, there is no race theory, if you want to call it that, that's going to change anybody's hearts or minds, period. That's only going to happen through the work of Christ in somebody's life. So what would I be saying to Abraham X. Kennedy? I would ask him, who do you think Jesus is?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think? And also this: if Jesus Christ is who he says he is in the Bible, what would that do to racism if we were to really believe what Jesus said and who he is and what he said about who we are as his creation? Right.
That's right.
So that's because that's really where the truth is. He would run circles around me in terms of all the specific history and legal theory and academic theory and things like that. Now, it's not that I didn't do that research, but he's steeped in it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. So it's just like Fauci with the COVID stuff. He knows more than me when it comes to virology, and I'm okay admitting that. But here's the thing: if he knows more than me, but I can spot the giant loophole, and I can see it, right?
Yeah.
If I can see it, why isn't he saying it? Because he must know it. The same would be true with an author like Abraham X. Kennedy, or different figures like that, or a different political or social leaders in that way. You can't reason with them in the same way that you couldn't convince me that Jesus isn't true. You know what I mean? There are just certain things, and it's going to take a spiritual work in their hearts to be able to do it. So.
Yeah. You let me change subject just a little bit. You say in the book, and brother, I can relate to this. So I've heard this. I mean, I've even said this. You mentioned in your book, if you're coming to church to get fed, quote unquote, or quote, I need to get something from the church, you're going to church for the wrong reasons. We should be going to glorify God. That's in your book, not get what we can. When I read that, I was like, holy cow. I mean, I can count the number of times I've either said it or heard somebody say, well, I didn't get fed this week. And I mean, you just put a whole different philosophy on it. Do you hear people say that same thing? Like, wow, I didn't think of it that way, that it's not about me. I need to go glorify God. That's, it's not about my needs.
What a difference it would be if we weren't always trying to glorify ourselves, right? Maybe we wouldn't be as hateful of others. Well, where does that start? That starts with our view of God. If we don't have a view of God where we glorify him and submit to him, we're going to put ourselves in his place in one way or another. Now, I will say this. So when it comes to that part in the book, the worship service, is for God. In fact, worship is and glory and honor that God alone is due because God alone is worthy. That's it. That's the best definition of worship I've ever read or studied. And in fact, one of the ways we know that Jesus Christ claimed to be God was that he accepted worship. He heard prayer. Well, none but the Father do that. Well, if Jesus is doing that, then he must be God as well. But as it were, you would never say that about your own house, but you would say that about God. We blame God for all kinds of things that are our fault. In fact, everything's our fault, isn't it? But you would never say, gosh, I came home today and I didn't get fed, and so I'm going to move out. You wouldn't write a letter to yourself and complain that you're not feeding yourself. Now, you might have a reason why you didn't get fed at home. Maybe times are tight, or maybe you lost your job, and there's tragedy that can happen. There's also laziness, which is honestly, if we're honest with ourselves, we are a spiritually lazy nation. We're spiritually apathetic. We expect institutions to do for us what we need to do, and we do that with God. Imagine if I'm not sure if I use this in the book or not, but if you're an athlete and you only ate a meal on game day, you'd be a pretty poor player.
Absolutely.
Because you're not eating during the week. You're not nourishing yourself during the week as a lifestyle. You're not, exercising or working out your body in the different ways. You're just waiting to get it all on game day. And I think a lot of people, especially Christians, and I'm guilty of this too, that's what we did. We didn't even crack open our Bibles. We don't stop to pray. We're engaging in everything we want all week long, and the reality is we're actually spiritually starving ourselves. So when we come to church, we have to consume that. when church, the worship service, is actually designed for us to pour out our affection and worship to God. But how can we when we've been ignoring him with the rest of our lives, so we don't even know what to worship him for? You know what I mean?
Right. Oh,
And-
you're nailing it, man.
And it puts the Sunday worship service, a lot of us, we think of Sunday as the first day of the week, and yes, it is on the calendar. I get that. But one of the things that one of the ministry philosophies we adopted at Church Plant was Sunday, we're gonna help teach and pray for our people to treat Sunday like the end of the week. We think of a Friday or a Saturday, and we are just blowing off steam from the week, right? Good, bad, and different. We're finally at rest. We're at peace. We're enjoying. Friday night is many people's favorite night because you have the most weekend left at that time. Well, okay, how different would Sunday be if we were actually in a relationship with God, dynamic, real, and living, Monday through Saturday, and when we came to church, well, gee, I've been hanging out with God all week, and look at everything that I saw him do in my life. Or look at the way he pulled me through this, or look at the way he healed our house from the sickness or the illness that we were all going through in the middle of the week and passing around. Or look at how he made the ends meet when there was more month left at the end of money, or just look at his goodness. And now I can worship him because now I don't have to take all that for myself. So I don't have to complain about the music that it's not my favorite. It doesn't matter. It's not for me anyway. I don't have to complain that the pastor didn't preach from the word because, of course, if he's a pastor teaching, he's preaching from the word. He may not have said something that I find directly applicable right now, but I could still worship and praise that God's truth is being proclaimed, and somebody bolder than me is willing to stand up and do that.
Right.
And I can still praise God that the person next to me made it to church with their family. I can praise God for the people who are going to come. I can praise God for the small groups that are available. I can praise God for all kinds of things because I'm actually doing life, so to speak, if you like to use that phrase, with him during the week instead of starving myself and hoping that the Christian buffet that I want to partake in has my favorite dishes available.
Man, you are right on, brother. Let me take a 45-second commercial break. We are live with Andrew Southwick of Cutlure Crossroads. His new book, More Than Reconciliation, coming to the table of grace right here on Beaufort County's House of Cards.
Everything that rocks is right here. Right here.
That's rock.
With Patriot Radio.
That's what I'm talking about.
Andrew, at the tail end of your book, your story about Richard was incredible. Not that I can relate to the story, as I cannot, but the story itself is incredible. In a nutshell, would you like to share the story of Richard?
Sure. So actually, I'll preface this by saying this. I'm starting filming. Actually, I leave tomorrow, and we're starting filming a documentary about Richard. And then we'll be taking that documentary and looking to get with the production team to make that an actual dramatized full-length feature film. So Richard is, and that's his real name. I asked him if I could use it in the book and told him what I was going to write and what I was going to say. I met him through my first job in broadcasting, which was as an audio engineer for a Christian network. And this is also in Florida. And he came in to tell his story. He was a Grand Dragon in the Ku Klux Klan and rose to some prominence within the Klan, to where he was having meetings with David Duke. Some will remember he ran for president back in the day and was one of the top leaders in the Klan. And so he was rubbing shoulders with the big boys in the Klan, and the Klan had plans for him. But so did God. And God did capture him in his heart, turned his whole life around to the point now where he pastors as an associate pastor in a predominantly Black church. I mean, there's some incredible stories that go with that. I'll leave that there. But one of the points I mentioned, and one of the primary question in the book is, if God asked you to, are you willing to love the person that you would rather hate? That's different than the person that you kind of hate but don't know. I would rather hate this kind of person. And we all have somebody like that. I would rather hate them than love them. These are the people that, if I'm honest, I don't pray for their salvation because I don't want them to be saved for whatever reason. Well, there was a time in my life when it was that way for Democrats. And here's what's weird. Like
Mhm.
my grandpa growing up, lifelong Democrat, did not agree with him politically at all. He passed away, but I carry his name to this day. I mean, I've had some very close friends and family who are Democrats and don't see things politically the way I do. But at the same time, I look down on Democrats. I just thought, they were some of the most intellectually vacuous group of people I've ever seen. Well, until you find out that a lot of the Republicans are doing the same thing as Democrats.
Exactly.
And then you realize that maybe you're the vacuous one for not catching up,
That's right.
But I remember when I asked Richard if we could start working on a documentary, and this documentary has been 4 years in the making. We're just starting filming of the first scene this weekend. So it tells you how long movies take to make. But I remember asking him, I don't see things the same way as you do, worldview. But I know that your story is one of Christ's transformation. That's the story that I want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be willing to trust me with telling your story like that? And he said, well, of course. And I remember I was conflicted because I was like, do I really want to work with somebody who sees things politically different than me, who's more quote unquote politically liberal than me?
Mm-hmm.
And it convicted me because now I am doing the same thing that I just wrote a book about not doing.
Yeah.
And why? Because I wasn't seeing Richard as a creation of God. And he professes a belief in Christ. So I wasn't even seeing him as a child of God. I was seeing him as a caricature of culture, not somebody who God bled and died for and rose again, and who saved, by his profession of faith in Christ. Whether or not we see the same diagnosis for the problems and therefore vote the same way in America is immaterial. That is not one of the criteria for salvation. And it just convicted me. And I was like, you know what? I can't do that. And that's recent in life. So this is something we have to learn and continue to submit ourselves to the lordship of Christ in our lives so that he can transform us in those ways. And when he does, we'll see some beautiful God stories and we'll get to be a part of some too.
I tell you, amen, amen, and amen. And that right there, that story, just that story alone explains the table of grace.
Yeah,
exactly. I kind of got into, I've never been a member of the KKK and nobody in my family ever has that I'm aware of, but I try to put myself into the seat of the folks at that church when he came out in his white, whatever they call that, the get up. I mean, did he do that on purpose? Or,
no.
I can't imagine his feeling. And then to hear and to feel that the guy, I say guys, I shouldn't, guys, gals.
Men. Yeah.
So
what happened was he was invited to preach at a men's conference. And this was through a predominantly Black church. Okay. So he went to preach and he brought his former Klan garb. And he didn't realize that it was going to be all Black men in the audience. So when he walked out and he brought it up and he's got them still, and I've seen them and have pictures and all that kind of stuff. He brought them out and they're on display standing up. And when he walked out, he describes it, I'm paraphrasing how he told me the story, and these stories will be in the documentary too.
Yeah.
But that he was just mortified because he was like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
What have I done?
And he felt bad because he thought he's going to be insulting them,
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's the thing: these men in that audience were old enough to have lived through Jim Crow, so this would have been a legitimate sore wound, not just the political whining and theater, right? Because look, prejudice is real no matter what. So we realize that.
Sure.
But what happened was one of the old men in the audience, and I don't say old men disparagingly, I'm just telling you what he's an older man. He came up and I guess he had tears in his eyes, and he came up to Richard and Richard said, Richard started apologizing for bringing this stuff.
Absolutely.
And the man asked him, he said, can I touch your robe? And Richard was like, okay. And so he lets the man touch his robe and feel the robe and feel the silk and the garment and the hood and touch the insignia and the patches.
Yeah.
And this started a chain reaction where I believe many of the men did that as well. And what the man said was, he said, all my life I've had to be afraid of that. but now I don't have to be afraid anymore because God sent you here to show me that.
Yeah.
And isn't that true? When God sends the right people at the right time with the right message in the right way, we don't have to live in that fear anymore. And speaking of fear, I mean, if there's anything that we are right now being told we have to live in every day is we be afraid of this and be afraid of that. Well, don't we need God to send those messengers so that those robes that we need to touch and feel and realize that they have no power, only Christ does. We need those moments today.
That, again, I mean, I can't say that, and maybe that wasn't the purpose of it in the book. But that story just spoke volumes. And, it's one of those stories that, you can relate to because it's not that long ago. If I had I don't have any atheist friends that I'm aware of, but if I did, I'd want them to hear that story because that right there speaks Jesus. That's all that is. And I'm just floored. Let me say, again, tell folks how they can pick up More Than Reconciliation, Coming to the Table of Grace. How can the folks get a copy of this?
The easiest way, go to my media production website, which is sodomediaproductions.com. So it's SODO mediaproductions.com. And on there you can click on books. It'll take you to where you can purchase my book. I've got this book and I have another children's book. If you have kids, it's about teaching your child their identity in Christ. Since our schools are going to teach identity, I thought we need to equip parents to do the same. So those books are there. But also, if you scroll down the homepage, you'll find a trailer for the documentary Brotherhood that I'm beginning to film as well. So you can see Richard talking about some of his history. And there's another gentleman as well in the film. It's a black guy who hated white people. And we show how God actually brought these two men together. Whereas before Christ got a hold of them, they would have certainly killed each other if they were in the same room. So you can check out some about the documentary, learn a little bit about Richard as well. But again, sodomediaproductions.com. And I gotta say, this is funny. So SODO is an abbreviation of South of the Dome. I'm from Seattle, and so I'm a big Seattle Seahawks fan, Seattle Mariners. And when I was growing up, the Seahawks and Mariners played in the Kingdome. The Kingdome was then demolished in 1999, I think, or maybe 2000, right in there. And in its place was, at the time, Safeco Field, which is now T-Mobile Park, where the Mariners play, and then Lumen Field, where the Seahawks play. And those two ballparks are located south of the Dome. So it's my own little tip of my hat to my hometown and my love of Seattle sports. But I had a pastor friend of mine, when I sent them the link to sodomediaproductions.com, it's his email filtered it out as spam because the first 5 letters of Sodo Media are SODOM, Sodom. And I thought it was a dirty website. And I'm like, I didn't think about that when I named my production company. Anyway, so now that I've got that image in your head, just know that it's Sodo Media Productions, and you can get there, and it is a wholesome and clean and good site. That's the best place to find the books. You can also see other archived episodes of Culture Crossroads there, which you can also hear Big Patriot Radio Sundays at 7. And you can learn some more about the documentary too. So lots of stuff there.
Lots of stuff there. And I hope I put it up on the screen. I hope I spelled all that right. SODOMedia.com. You want to check out this book, ladies and gentlemen. It is, this is a daggone good book. It's just good. It's just a good book. And let me tell you, my friend, I want you to know this sincerely. You are always welcome at my table, any table I'm at, wherever, at any time, my friend.
I appreciate it. Same to you as well. It's God's table, right? So let's keep making that bigger through God's word.
All right.
In us.
Andrew Southwick, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, buddy.
Thank you.
All right. It is about 9:15 here on Big Patriot Radio.
Everything that rocks is right here. Right here.
That's rock.
With Big Patriot Radio.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right. Again, if you can, check out that book. Check out his website. Check out his podcast. We have it here on Big Patriot Radio. 7 o'clock on Sundays. I checked back on the email. I don't know what happened to Congresswoman Mace, nor Gabrielle, her comms gal. I apologize to my viewers, but we'll try that again anytime during the campaign season. All those things can and will happen. One other thing that I want to leave with you. I want you to check out this site. We've been talking about preparedness and how to be prepared and things like that. This is a site. We're sharing it right now. I believe it should be on your screen. Let's go back. Let's make this up here. There we go. Even though it says page not found, you can disregard that. This is a site. Again, we're talking about preparedness and in case of, no electricity, blah, 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 with the stuff that's going on around the world and the threat of war on, 3 continents, really, stuff that we're getting into. This is a site that you may want to go to and just check out. There are things called EAM, which are emergency. I forget what the A stands for, but it's messages from the government. Militarily, some of it you won't understand because it's all NATO speak phonetics or alphabet. But these are there are some things called Sky King and Sky Master. Those are also messages across the world to and from military hubs and their radios and so forth. This site, again, it is, I should probably tell you the name of the site. What is the website there, Mike? It is Skywavelinux.com. Skywavelinux, Linux.com. If you go there, click on this 8.9. Oops, I got to change screens to do that. You got to check on this screen right here, 8992 kilohertz live. When you click on that, it will take you to the Skywave proxy site for that particular radio frequency. And as that is loading, it's a heavy site. This is worldwide. We'll get that loading. And there you can hear in the background. Some static. However, this is where you will pick up those messages. I have been listening to this. My wife and I have been listening to this for several days. Whether it's this particular frequency or the 11,000 or 15,000 kilohertz, you can pick up some information. Turn that down. You can pick up information off these sites that are related to what we're actually going through here right now in the United States and across the world. So just, just throwing that out there. The Skylinux.com. It's, are you going to learn anything from it? I don't know, but it's good entertainment. And it's interesting, and it keeps you abreast of really what's going on, because quite frankly, the things that we have learned over the last several weeks, not just a couple days. We're probably into the several months now, are things that have come on mainstream media days, even as much as a week later. So it's all about being ahead of the game, being prepared. It's amazing to see, stuff to hear about it, but it's not being reported till a couple days later. That's kind of scary. That's kind of scary for the untrained or the novice mind, and we want to keep everybody abreast. So anyway, next week we will not have a show. We're going to take a break next week, but the week after that we have South Carolina 1st Congressional District candidate Bill Young who is trying to get the nomination over Nancy Mace and Catherine Templeton for the U.S. Congress seat here in the Low Country. Bill Young is going to be on here, and also we have the whistleblower that we've been talking to you about. Looks like he will be on that week as well. So stay tuned to that. Stay tuned daily. Things are happening. We went live with some on our YouTube channel this week twice with coverage over in the Middle East, and just stay tuned to that. Click subscribe, ring the bell, and you'll know when we have a live show coming up on YouTube. Hey, let us know if you have a tip or a story you want to share. If you're a former or current Beaufort County employee and want to tell your story that has something to do with all we've been talking about for the last couple of years, let us know. Email me at bigpatriotradio@gmail.com. That's bigpatriotradio@gmail.com. So until next week, keep those lines. 6. Good night, America. We'll see you in 2 weeks.